What happens when the love story the world thought it understood unravels in a single headline? What happens when the image of a perfect romance, carefully curated over years of public fascination, collapses under the weight of scandal? 3 years after fans watched Shen Yue and Wang capture hearts around the world with their undeniable chemistry, the news has come, shattering illusions, breaking millions of hearts, and sending ripples across social media, entertainment circles, and the very fabric of fan devotion. It began quietly, as most scandals do. Rumors whispered through social media, small inconsistencies in posts, fleeting glimpses that did not match the narrative fans had been fed. At first, these hints were dismissed. After all, Shen Yue and Wang had built an image of perfection, a love story so seamless it seemed almost untouchable. But when patterns began to emerge, when anonymous tips and insider accounts started circulating, the world realized that perhaps the reality behind the glamour was far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. The revelation, when it finally broke, was instantaneous in impact. Headlines erupted across the globe. Shen Yue and Wang's scandal shakes fans worldwide. The phrasing alone carried the weight of magnitude, signaling that this was not a minor misstep or a fleeting controversy, but a fracture in the image that millions had held dear. The timing, too, was perfect in its shock. 3 years after their meteoric rise as the beloved on-screen couple, when fans believed their romance had solidified into both public and private certainty. The scandal itself remains layered and complex, a narrative constructed from conflicting accounts, leaked messages, and the careful interpretation of gestures, interactions, and absences. Analysts of celebrity culture note that the most devastating stories are rarely about the facts alone. They're about expectation, about trust, about the mythology fans create and cling to. And in this case, the myth of Shen Yue and Wang was near perfect, which made the collapse all the more dramatic. This story isn't over. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. We follow the moments and emotions of your favorite TV stars. Stay with us. Fans reacted as though a personal betrayal had occurred. Social media timelines flooded with disbelief, heartbreak, and a desperate need to reconcile reality with the image they had adored. Discussion boards dissected every moment of their public appearances over the past 3 years. The smiles, the glances, the carefully curated social media posts. Each was now under scrutiny, a potential clue, a fragment of truth waiting to be interpreted. The scale of the reaction was unprecedented. In a matter of hours, millions of fans were debating, speculating, and theorizing. The scandal did not just affect the celebrities. It reshaped the cultural landscape surrounding fandom, trust, and the fragile boundary between public persona and private life. For a generation that grew up following their every move, the revelation felt personal, intimate, and devastating. Industry insiders noted that the fallout would be lasting. Shen Yue and Wang had been symbols, icons whose romance had fueled dramas, advertisements, and a global fascination with on-screen chemistry translated into off-screen devotion. When the narrative fractured, it left a void, a vacuum where adoration had once been unshakable, now replaced by doubt, confusion, and a need for explanation. And yet, even amid heartbreak, there is fascination. People cannot look away, not from scandal, not from mystery, not from the collapse of something they once believed unbreakable. The story is compelling precisely because it is human. It speaks to the fragility of perception, the complexity of relationships lived under the glare of fame, and the way public expectation can amplify every imperfection into global consequence. As the scandal spreads, analysts, fans, and commentators continue to reconstruct the timeline, trips together, public gestures of intimacy, interviews where subtleties were reinterpreted, and moments that now read differently in light of this revelation. What was once celebrated as chemistry, compatibility, and devotion is now examined through the lens of skepticism, betrayal, and the painful awareness that appearances are not always truth. This is the paradox of celebrity scandal, fascination and heartbreak entwined. Millions are grieving not just the reality of a fractured romance, but the shattering of a story they had invested in, hoped for, and cherished. The characters they adored, the couple who had seemed destined for eternity, are now revealed to be human, flawed, and vulnerable. And that is what makes this story so compelling, so cinematic, and so unforgettable. Because in the end, it is not just about Shen Yue or Wang. It is about trust, expectation, illusion, and the fragility of the images we construct around the people we admire. It is about the collision of reality with fantasy and the heartbreak that inevitably follows when the two diverge. 3 years of adoration, 3 years of dreams projected onto a relationship, and suddenly it all changes. The scandal breaks, and the world watches, unable to look away, struggling to reconcile the myth with the truth, and captivated by the drama that unfolds not on screen, but in real life. As the story unfolded, the fallout was immediate and all-encompassing. Social media became a storm of conflicting emotions, shock, heartbreak, outrage, and disbelief, all colliding in a torrent of messages, comments, and trending hashtags. Fans who had once celebrated every public smile and subtle interaction between Shen Yue and Wang now scrolled through feeds with a sense of betrayal, trying to reconcile the image they had cherished with the revelations that had come to light. The reactions were global. In China, South Korea, and beyond, fan forums erupted in analysis. Every public appearance from the past 3 years was dissected, replayed, and reinterpreted. Gestures that had seemed innocent now appeared calculated. Smiles that once conveyed warmth were scrutinized for hidden meaning. Moments of physical closeness, once celebrated as evidence of chemistry, were now analyzed as carefully curated performance. Every detail, once mundane, was suddenly a piece of a puzzle millions were desperate to solve. Entertainment media reacted with equal intensity. News outlets compiled timelines, reviewed interviews, and even contacted insiders in search of confirmation. Each segment of video or photo was magnified, slowed down, and examined frame by frame. Commentators debated motives, personal responsibility, and the broader impact on the culture of fandom. The scandal was no longer just a story about two celebrities. It had become a phenomenon, a case study in the fragility of public perception and the consequences of projecting fantasy onto real lives. Fans themselves were divided. Some demanded explanations, hoping that clarity might restore the image of the couple they had long idolized. Others expressed deep disappointment, feeling that the personal betrayal extended to their emotional investment. Online communities, once places of celebration, turned into arenas of debate, grief, and sometimes even heated confrontation. Yet, even amid heartbreak, fascination persisted. No one could stop watching, replaying, and analyzing. The allure of scandal, of human imperfection exposed, proved irresistible. The entertainment industry, too, felt the ripple effects. Endorsements, projects, and public appearances associated with both Shen Yue and Wang were scrutinized. Brands and producers reassessed partnerships, cautious in the wake of public sentiment. Analysts noted that the impact would not be fleeting. Scandals of this magnitude shape perception long after the headlines fade, altering trajectories and reshaping careers. Every move made by the two actors in the coming months would be interpreted in the shadow of the revelation. And yet, amid the chaos, one truth became clear. The fascination was not merely about betrayal or rumor. It was about human connection and expectation. Millions of hearts had been invested not just in a couple, but in the idea of a perfect love story. The scandal exposed the tension between fantasy and reality, reminding the world that the lives of public figures, no matter how polished, are ultimately human, complex, and vulnerable. For fans, the heartbreak was tangible. Comments flooded forums. "I can't believe this is real. I feel like I've lost a story I loved. They were supposed to be perfect together." The emotional intensity was extraordinary, as if millions of people were mourning a shared dream rather than the actions of two individuals. Social media became a virtual wake, a space for collective grief and reflection. And yet, even in disappointment, the narrative retained its magnetism. Analysts noted that this scandal would be remembered not just for its shock, but for its lessons in perception, privacy, and the delicate dance between celebrity and audience. It was a real-life drama that no screenplay could match, a story of longing, expectation, secrecy, and revelation, all unfolding under the global spotlight. The Shen Yue and Wang scandal was more than a headline. It was a cultural event, a moment in time when the illusion of perfection collided with the reality of human complexity. Millions of hearts were broken, yet millions more remained captivated, unable to turn away from the unfolding drama, desperate to understand what had happened and what would come next. And as the world waits for the next development, one fact is undeniable. Some stories, once revealed, cannot be ignored, and some truths, no matter how carefully concealed, will always find a way to surface.